want to welcome you to the Ask Jeff YouTube channel. Here's today's question. Why was the second Israelites' exile longer than the first? Well, I'm presuming the intent of this question is the 40 years in the wilderness versus the 70 years in Babylon. Well, these are two completely different yet pretty much related issues. Let's go back to what we know as the book of Numbers, the wilderness experience. What happened? The Israelites come out of Egypt, they go through the Red Sea, Moses strikes the rock, you know that famous story. Basically 11 days into the journey to the promised land, which by the way would not have taken a whole lot longer to get there, they began to whine and cry and complain. We had it better in Egypt. So what was the consequence? What was the punishment of God? He said, because of your unbelief, nobody who is of the age to understand the difference between good and evil will go into the promised land. Basically, everybody but the children were going to, quote, die out. 40 years later, that, quote, generation of rebellion is deceased. They go into the promised land. The time span was simply for the occurrence of natural death. When we get to the Babylonian captivity, which by the way was mentioned by Isaiah, Jeremiah, I believe Obadiah, a host of other prophets, the 70 years was not the dying out of a generation. The 70 years was a direct punishment for the rebellion that had gone on for decades and centuries. It was a predisposed time period that God ordained that, for lack of better terms, wasn't just the disbelief of one generation, it was the entirety of the people of God. So you've got 40 years in the wilderness, 70 years in Babylon, and then you look at the book of Daniel chapter 9, I think we could say that in the last 2,000 years, we've had another exile. The Israelite people have been displaced. We formally call it the dispersion from roughly about 70 AD to, most people would agree today, about 1948. So you've got 40, 70, and then roughly about 1,900 years. But in every single situation, God had a provision to get them back home. Great question. If you have one, send it to AskJeff.net. Maybe your question will be tomorrow's. Thanks for being a part of today's daily question. Now, we answer a question each and every day. Please feel free to submit a new question at AskJeff.net. We may not have gotten to yours today, but we eventually will continue to be a part of this. Subscribe so you don't miss out on a question every day.